and gentlemen, our country is falling apart.
The nation is in mourning tonight.
Our institutions are failing. Crime is out of control. It is our duty to fix it. We are touching on every sector of society. Race, class, and corruption. Nothing is off limit. No holds barred. The Cold Truth with Kimm. The power belongs to the people. Join us right here, Monday to Sunday, 4:45 p.m. to 5:45 p.m.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you all for being part of another installment of The Cold Truth. I am Kimm Cole, and in studio today I have with me Shabaka Kambon and Rubidiri Victor. Our topic for discussion: Black Panther, the film Black Panther, and the Afro-Trinbagonian community. Good evening, gentlemen.
Hi, thanks for having us here, man, Kim.
Now, it's all over social media. The reviews are pouring in. Black Panther, the Marvel movie, is a hit with audiences around the globe, and particularly with those in the African lineage. While it is not uncommon to see people dressed in African wear for emancipation, many people have been rushing to buy kente cloth, dashikis, and African clothing as a show of solidarity and support for the film. While the gesture shows a level of respect and love for African culture, we wanted to look at it from the perspective of how this respect and love for the African community can be applied to support for the African Trinbagonian community, or the Afro-Trinbagonian community and race relations. Now today, let's welcome the director of the Crossroads Freedom Project, the organization that initiated the process which saw Milner Hall change to Freedom Hall and called for the statue of Columbus to be moved to a museum. We do have Shabaka Kambon and Rubidiri Victor, who is the chair of the Artists Coalition of Trinidad and Tobago and a film critic. Good evening, gentlemen.
Hi again, Trinidad and Tobago. Yeah.
It's lovely to have you here. So, Ruby, now you know we have history from BCM history, Black Caucus Movement, so you are no stranger to me. And Shabaka, I became aware that, you know, you are the son of the father of the Emancipation, the chairman of the Emancipation Committee, Kafra Kambon. So I think it was fitting to have you two gentlemen to give, you know, your perspective from the African community's standpoint. Now, what do you think of the response by the Afro-Trinbagonian community to the American film Black Panther?
Well, I'd say, first of all, it's a global African diaspora response, right? There's a number of things happening. First of all, the Black Panther myth is, the Black Panther is the first black superhero in comics, single comic superhero. Right, so the major form of storytelling on the planet right now is comic book movies, right? They've won almost $20 billion in the last couple of years alone, Marvel and DC. That's the primary, you know, the premium form of storytelling. And so now you have that first black superhero in one of those movies. And in the movie that he was in before, Captain America: Civil War, he was the most honorable, intelligent character and with the most, you know, and with warrior skills and the best warrior and all those kinds of things, which kind of set up this thing. And then the vision of Wakanda as an Afro-futurist kingdom, an unconquered African kingdom, never colonized by the West, in control of its materials and the most technologically advanced nation on planet Earth. And the way it was realized by the art director and costume directors, which people saw in the trailers, kind of set off an excitement in the black diaspora, because black imaging has been heavily policed by white people since from plantation slavery come forward, in terms of the types of images that blacks are allowed to create and that are allowed to appear in the mainstream. So most of the times, the images of black people in films, in popular culture, stereotypes,
Negative
right?
stereotypes.
Negative stereotypes. And when we are allowed heroes, we are allowed heroes only within the agency of our own communities. So it's normally black on black violence. So yeah, like Luke Cage, Power Man, or Black Lightning, and that kind of stuff. So you're allowed to be a hero, but only within this little ghetto where you exist. Because so you cannot hit against the power structure, which is white over brown over black, the white supremacist construct, which the last 500 years of colonialism has put on planet Earth, and which Hollywood is the main arbiter of, right? Of white over brown over black.
Right.
And so those are the kinds of images that people are accustomed to seeing. And so the Black Panther promised to people, first of all, this African superhero, noble, intelligent, full of moral courage, and one of the greatest warriors on planet Earth. And in the comics, he is that. He's defeated the Fantastic Four, Captain America, Wolverine, the Super Skrull, all kinds of people.
Let me just add one thing there, because you talked about it in terms of the diaspora, but the film has also broken records in West Africa, in East Africa.
Well, I said that I'm talking about African diaspora, the entire
Africa and its diaspora.
The entire African
world has been gripped by the cultural phenomenon that is the Black Panther. Let me just add one more thing. The other thing is that you have to remember that if you ask any child on planet Earth to draw a map of the outline of a continent, the easiest one for them would be Africa.
Right.
And that is not, there's no mystery to that. Those of us who left the continent, who came to the West, we have kept this idea of this continent as something sacred in our imaginings, in our visions, in our politics. It's still, even up to today, this is 2018, you could still walk, if you walk through town, you're more likely to see a map of Africa somewhere than any other continent. In fact, most people would be hard-pressed to even, if you were to show them the outline of other continents, they'd be hard-pressed to figure out what they are. So that is a major part of our imagination. And the idea of Wakanda, is something that has a lot of currency for many people as a result.
It's something that people have dreamed of, like the whole dream of Zion back in Africa, the Rastafari dream of the Gavi dream of the kind of golden city that will be repatriated to. It's been there, but this is the first time that in mainstream stuff and the amount of sophistication of the CGI and the architecture that these production designers and those kinds of people put into it, it's the first time you can touch it and actually see it. And that whole thing of, so all the narratives that we have are these kinds of things where we're only allowed to be statistic. We only can be realists. We can't be fantastical, right? So white people could fly, they could do all those kind of things. We must be slaves in a ghetto, gangsters, whatever. And in this thing, we have an opportunity to dream a future where Africa is the seat of technological and other power and integrity and stuff. And that inspired everybody. I mean, yeah.
Now, as we zero into the response by the Afro-Trinbagonian community, now a few people on social media made statements about people wearing African clothes for this movie while noting the lack of support for the emancipation events with the same enthusiasm. Do you think there is a lack of support for these events, and if yes, why? Shabaka.
Well, I think that the ESD, the main aspect of the work of the Emancipation Support Committee in terms of an event is Emancipation Day. And that has been very heavily supported since we recaptured the day from Discovery Day back in 1985. Of course, the ESC wasn't founded in 1985, but the very same people who were part of the organization today were part of the thrust back then, going back into the 70s. In fact, today is the anniversary of the Black Power Revolution.
Yeah.
And so I want to take this opportunity to salute all those the veterans who are still alive, the children of the struggle, and so on, because the celebration of emancipation really starts with NJAC in the 1970s. And even in the late 70s, when you have Brother Lancelot Lane coming on the scene and so on, and he, pioneering different aspects of the festival, including the street parade, he's heavily supported by either NJAC itself. He works within the context of NJAC, and he also works within the context of ex-NJAC members in those early days. And so that's really the thing. But going back to the point, I think that in that regard, that particular aspect of having a dignified celebration of such an important milestone in our history, I think ESC has been quite successful in that regard, and that has been, and in fact, that has contributed. It is events like that and organizations like that that have contributed to the phenomenon that Black Panther is all over the world. In Guyana, for example, it was the ACDA, I don't remember exactly, it's African Cultural Development Association, which is the equivalent of the ESC that celebrates emancipation there. They, it's their members who dressed and took drums and so on and went to the premiere. Other members of similar organizations in Canada, in different states in the United States of America, and so on. So throughout the diaspora, yes, I think people who've been energized by the consciousness of the equivalent of organizations like that have...
Right.
But what I will also say, we have to remember, Black Panther, which is owned and run by Disney and Marvel, right? It's a $350 million US dollar product, right? It's $200 million US dollars made it, and $150 million worth of marketing, right? Multiplied by 6.5 or 7, and you'll get an idea of the budget, right? And that it's on every screen anywhere in the planet. It's on every,
so
that is what is behind this, right? And so, behind that though, so that's one thing, but behind that, it's also, Black Panther is also the sum of a cultural movement that is happening right now. It's a kind of small Black renaissance that is happening in Black American culture, right? Where you have Black Panthers, so you have all these Black African actors who are part of Black Panther, who are part of a wave of African actors coming through Britain that are now flooding performing arts all over the planet in terms of theatre, film, and those kinds of things. There are 5 of them in the main cast there.
Well, Winston Duke is
right.
the leading actor.
There are 3 Yale graduates, right? So you have a whole set of Black diaspora, people entering Ivy League, kind of stuff, and they are all in that film. You have as a Black producer, as a Black co-producer who is inside Marvel, Nate Parker, who worked through the ranks to climb all the way up there, who greenlit Falcon to get Falcon into the Avengers, and who greenlit Black Panther to get into Captain America, and who greenlit the Black Panther film. And that's the power of having presence in the boardroom. And that's the culmination of a generation of people who have been battling to get that kind of access. The costume designer and production designer are African, Black American female designers and that kind of stuff who work through the ranks. And because there's a whole set of Black independent film that has been happening in the last 15 years, they have been working in those things, and they've now been able to cross over into this and that kind of stuff. So there's the result. You have the soundtrack by Kendrick Lamar, where there's a moment in hip hop happening right now, kind of rebirth, the third wave of hip hop, led by Kendrick Lamar and that kind of stuff.
Let me just add to what gives that edge is the fact that you now have, at the same time, you have this whole global resurgence of
Black activism,
pre-World War II. Neo-Nazis.
Right, yeah.
You have a president that says the neo-Nazis, they're okay, they're not bad people, they're not all bad people in the White House, and things like that. So you have this and people are responding to that as
Right.
well. That
And you
sort
have
of
the
thing gives
Black
it a
Lives
whole different
Matter
types of edge.
movement,
Right,
which has
and I wanna keep
reactivated
our
black
discussion-
activism
right, I wanna
worldwide.
keep our discussion centered to Trinidad and Tobago.
No, well,
because
we are responding. We are part
Yes.
of that feeling, and I can say because first of all, one, that Black American culture is that kind of global pop culture and global diasporic pop culture. So we have been responding and being part of seeing those images and feeling those things happen and those kind of things, the Idris Elbas and all those other kinds of things, the women, I mean, those things, and those kind of things, that's what has been happening. So we've been part of that movement. We have seen and we've been part of the rise of Obama and the white supremacist kind of response to Obama, and then the Black Lives Matter response to the attack on black lives that has been part of that. We have been
I
part...
can make it even more, bring it home even more, because the Crossroads Freedom Project, which started in 2016, we started our activism in 2016. One of the things we were responding to was the Rhodes Must Fall movement in South Africa. And by the time we got going, by the time we did our national launch in June 2017, New Orleans had already taken down monuments, taken down NOLA. We were able to invite Michael Kessmore here from New Orleans, and then in Bristol, England, people respond. So it's the world is the global village is real.
Yeah.
Right. But we in Trinidad, we have our own issues, particularly within the African community.
Right.
And so what I want to find out really is, do you think a movie of this nature will help leverage the empowerment of the Afro-Trinbagonian community?
Yes, I think that what the movie has sparked off a dream of a future and of a possibility which has been kept under wraps for 500 years. 500 years we have never been able to dream of a future and of a superhuman future and of a future where we lead and where we are unconquered and where we own and control resources.
Stick us in there with the lead. What do you think of the leadership within the African community?
Well, I mean,
before we move forward, let me just say one more thing about that. In the sense that, one of the things that we've been told over and over again is that the Negro, which is what we were told we were, is separate and apart from the African. And what this film does very, very well, is it sort of puts a lie to all that. In a sense, I mean, just the way the film is cast, there's that, somebody from Tobago, somebody from Guyana, somebody
from
the
different
continent
parts
of
of
Africa,
the
the US, Canada. In fact, there was a guy, I heard a story
there
about.
was also a lady from the Hub who played a pivotal role in the movie.
Okay,
her name is
I heard that there was somebody else.
So I mean, so they all, so it reminds you, even if you're not thinking about it consciously, that we're all one people. Everybody looks just like each other. You can't tell the difference if you don't give the character a different accent. They're all the same. And I think that's revolutionary. That in itself is revolutionary. That's revolutionary. So it brings home this unity of African people worldwide, which is something that the part of the narrative of colonialism has always been to deny that this exists, to deny the possibility of reconnection and so on.
But what about, the conversation is taking a different turn, because I wanted to find out about the leadership within the African community, and then you spoke about colonialism, not wanting African people to unite. But in Trinidad and Tobago, we have various factions of the African community. We have various African groups, and it appears that we are fragmented. Rubadiri, I believe you can attest to the fact that, we have had the Black Caucus movement in Trinidad, TNT, and then we have the Emancipation Support Committee. And somewhere I have been made aware that there was some sort of friction between the BCM, who is about empowering the African community, as well as the Emancipation Support Committee that is also meant to be empowering the African community.
I think those things are
unwillingness to partner.
I don't know. I think those things are artificial. I think at different organizations always have different different missions and that kind of stuff, and everybody's mission is not everybody else's mission, and that's fine.
It should be about the empowerment of the African.
Yeah, and I think that people agree on more things that we disagree on. I think the main thing that has happened to African people, because if we zone in on the groups that exist and stuff, we miss the larger narrative. Pre-1970, there were mass movements of African people, right? That a whole century of movements, of social movements of African people here and internationally and that kind of stuff, where people mobilize and change the course of the planet, right? They change the democratic structures in their countries. They open up things to integration, mobility, all kinds of different things. What happened in the 1970s is that a lot of that agency that existed in black social movements was handed over to politicians. This is something that happened across the African diaspora. So a lot of people who were part of social movements, Garveyite movements, Butlerite movements, emancipation, black power movements, a whole set of different movements, gave civil rights movements and those kinds of things, gave over the agency to black politicians in the belief, having won the victories of the 60s and the early 70s, the victories of the ballot, of integration of mainstream institutions and those kind of things, believing that the next wave would have been black politicians were going to finish the job that was started by social movements. Black politicians across the world, in most part, betrayed that mission and sided with a lot of the power structures and those kind of things. And the thing is that the African movements that have appeared post the 1970s and those kinds of things are movements that are trying now to repair the damage and re-coalesce the African nation that for the century before that had been very organized. They had so organized that they had changed the fate of planet Earth. They had independence movements, civil rights movements, social movements, and those kinds of things. So the Emancipation Support Committee, Black Caucus, the Louverture Club, their whole, the Orisha movements, the Black cultural movements, and all those movements, as well as things like the Black Lives Matter, and all those other kinds of things on the ground in the States, the reparations movements,
Vic,
all those movements.
I want to just differ with you on one slight point. I think you're absolutely correct when you say...
Sorry, before we go forward, our telephone lines are open, 6229785 or 6286093 to be a part of the discussion. As our fourth panel member, you are welcome to call.
Yeah. I want to just differ with you on one small point, in that, yes, the majority of the people went with the political option.
Yeah.
But from the very outset, you had people who saw the fallacy in going that way.
Yeah. We
and
know
in Trinidad
that.
and Tobago, there's a document that was produced by NJAC called Conventional Power or Revolution, Conventional Politics or Revolution. If you want to understand this conversation that was taking place, there were people within the organization who understood, listen, if we keep going this politics route, we could find ourselves in power, but we could still fail the people. And those people went for what we call cultural nationalism as an alternative. So we said, we will build consciousness. You guys go ahead with the and the ESC comes out of that tradition.
Right, I say that the masses, the masses went with the idea, and I think the rise of Obama and the failure of Obama in a kind of way. Sure, no problem.
Hi, good afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, my love. How are you doing?
Now, I have to say as it is. African people, in Trinidad especially, have no unity with one another. We only have talk. You had the Black Caucus, you had the Emancipation, they couldn't even come together. You understand? African people is not only to dress up on Emancipation Day as going to. You have to think deeply. Not only dress up and after Emancipation everybody gone. You have to think positive. That is why the other race will bind together, and when they go forward, they go with a force. But African people don't know nothing about that. Are tired, are fed up. or not only talking and what just up emancipation, have all kind of things African people survive. Why they wouldn't come together and stand up as the Mahatma and all the people and they come together. What happened to we African people? All right, okay.
Thank you so
All right,
much.
but again, I'll say is that the Black Caucus and the Emancipation Support Committee and other groups did come together around the UN's decade declaration for the decade for African people, and came up with an entire agenda. Went through, came up with language and that kind of stuff in terms of what were the missions and what we would try to accomplish during this period and all those different kinds of things. So there has been collaboration between the groups. Yes, there could be more.
I would say there were also many members of people who were members of the Emancipation Support Committee who were members of the Black Caucus as well.
But both of us, we are best partners and stuff and thing, and you know, I mean, it's like, you know, I mean,
I've attended Black Caucus meetings.
You know,
at different
I have been part of the
junctures and
ESC.
so on.
I mean,
But I'm talking about, you know, serious supporting
yeah,
each
well,
other.
I mean, you know, the Black Caucus is fragmented now, from what I understand,
I'm not
and
talking
there's
about now, I'm talking about when the BCM, was revamped. We're talking 3 years ago. Because, and I've got to stick a pen to take this call. Hi, good afternoon. Welcome to our program.
Hi, good afternoon.
Yes, my love, good afternoon.
Well, I still, as a caller, want to hear why the Emancipation Support Committee didn't get on board, or I see the linkage that's supposed to be there.
and get a what?
Because
on board.
I was watching to see that unification, but instead, one set wanted to go one way while the other one's calling and trying to pull them. But one set looked like they was more concerned about what they're getting from government, so people to dress up and look that, rather than for African people to move forward. Because the fragmentation I know in Black Caucus, I see it now, is because there are African people who ain't want to come together and unite, including these groups. Because it had to start from the head. And if these groups ain't unite, then you couldn't expect the African people to unite. Because if people looking and people watching, they need to see the groups display that unity that they're asking for. Because if Emancipation Support Committee want to talk about the emancipation and freedom for African people, freedom starts with unity. And I ain't talking about the beating around the bush all they doing, they talking about, oh, well, we think on issues. Well, I want to, where did the issues go? Where did the support was with both groups to push that agenda forward? Otherwise, both all they talking foolishness on the TV here today. Both all they. Unless both all they had come together and unite.
All right, so
Sorry.
Sure.
Thank you so much for your contribution. Callers, I would ask that you be respectful to, my guest on set. But in a nutshell, the caller is,
yeah, well, we
making
heard them.
assertion
We heard them. Again, I would say that I mean the caucus attended all the emancipation things. They partnered. They sat with. I mean, there was a lot of collaboration that happened. The thing, that's one. The other thing is, let's remember there's a context, right? If African unity was an easy thing, then we would not be where we are now. And there are reasons why African unity is difficult, right? I mean, 500 years of colonial experimentation in division has resulted in where we are now, right? I mean, these are serious things. These are genocidal.
We're talking about Trinidad and Tobago, and that's why I said...
Well, right, Trinidad and Tobago, we went through slavery. We went through slavery. We went through the destruction.
A unified Syrian community. We are seeing...
There are 1,090 Syrians in the country. It's easy for a small tribe that is surrounded to be unified and that kind of stuff. East Indians never had the destruction of... There are only two East Indian religions. There's Islam and Hinduism. And people inside Islam rally around Islam and stuff, and people who are Hindus rally around Hindus and that kind of stuff with clear 10,000-year-old edicts and those kinds of things. We had such things pre-slavery. and those kind of things. Things that where at a drop of a hat, at the sound of a call and that kind of thing, but those things were destroyed by genocidal forces, by scientific application of genocidal forces at each step of the way, by education systems, by punishments and that kind of stuff that were put in place to ensure that those things don't happen. Anytime those things happened, anytime African unity has happened on the planet, the response has been assassination of leaders, destructions of groups and sabotage by white agencies and those kinds of things. So the thing is to come and visit the lack of African unity to the point of where you would want it to be is to divorce ourselves from that history. And we are in the process. It is an ongoing process to create that space. And the doors are still open for all of those groups and that kind of stuff because we are still here.
Yeah,
Two of us are still here. We are here sitting down here.
Caller is here still. Caller, thank you for holding.
Yeah.
Yes, hello.
Good
Kimm?
Hello.
Yes, a wonderful program. I expect it to be. But, Kimm, you're not asking these two gentlemen the other day those hard questions. I mean, and you're all beaten around the bush because really and truly, I think a few days ago, I hear a few callers asking you what happened to the Black Caucus. And you should do a program on the Black Caucus. And for that matter, you have the opportunity to be with Brother Rupert Derry and Brother Carter Combe on Sunday. And you know, because you was in the belly of the Black Caucus, and you know the defeat that came from, I could definitely say both of them that are sitting there, all of them. Because for that matter, let us take number one, let us start with Rupert Derry. Rupert Derry, as you know, was a board member. And he definitely knows my contribution towards the movement to change the lives of African people in Trinidad and Tobago, in which he knows I spend millions of dollars. It's not I say this now. He cannot deny that because he knows of it.
Yeah,
and when this fellow with the horse face that went away and get problem, the homosexual fellow who gets problem with his face and things, and he gets in the air and start to ridicule me. Because the other members, I don't know if it's some of them, get behind him for power struggle. I never want power because I am all right already with my family, but I wanted the relief of my people. I know the problem that we face. And for that matter, we contributed, we advertised the Kappa movement and everything like that. And every day, for that matter, they get grants from government, we don't, as you know, never. And when they have the business in the savannah, they charge us $7,000 for the tent. And you know that. And to be frank, they are not facing the fact what happened to the Black Caucus movement. And I must tell you, the word that the gentleman used a while ago when you all cut it, it's not a bad word. I want you to understand that. So don't talk like if he was being abusive. He was not. But I'm saying, you have the opportunity to ask these two gentlemen some hard questions of the Black Caucus. Don't even study the movie. What happened to the Black Caucus where they were saying William Monroe and his son was the problem from the Black Caucus going forward, and he wants the African people to go forward, so he resigned to allow it to go forward as they are saying. And what happens is now, it is in the locker room cemetery and everybody stays silent and nobody says nothing. So how you expect us to go forward positive and to do positive things to change the lives of African people? That wonderful idea that I came forward with, and not only come forward with the idea and spend millions and millions. I take my office, my building, and prepare for the movement with all the equipment. I've used my home for fundraising. I used the land and everything. I've given them tents and everything free. I didn't charge them as government and them getting money. I just charge all the African people. Not a cent. I give them table, tents, free, everything.
Yes,
free.
Mr. Monroe, we are all fully aware of the contribution that you have made.
You have to ask those people hard questions, and then if we have to go forward, I'm not vexed with them. But I am sorry for the problem of the African people in Trinidad and Tobago. They're laughing at us now. They're laughing at us now. Because at one stage, we were fighting all the issues in which all in the savannah, the people couldn't sell, and so we fought those problems. The lady with a problem going up Tagariga or something like that. It's 4 roads where Apple were taking all the land from people. And the list can go on.
Yes.
And now you cannot even find an office for the Black Caucus. And when they were saying Monroe is the problem, how I become the problem? I mean, I have never yet said that people don't understand. They see someone come forward, honest and conscientious and meaningful, working with them to change the lives, to give them strength that they could go forward in a positive way, and that is the way they treat them.
Thank you so much.
Sorry for being probably so aggressive, but I am not aggressive. I am hurt the way in which African people are living and cannot unite. Why we cannot unite? I come forward and say, no, let us unite. Let us, and if ask Rupert every day, if he could give us a iota where I stand up once and say, we shouldn't unite with this and we shouldn't unite with that. Because I never take leadership role.
Thank you so much.
Thank God I didn't take leadership
for your contribution,
role. I remain as a book.
Yes, and I would, I do apologize. It appears that you were cut off, but
right. So, as a person who was on the board of the Black Caucus, let me.
Before you answer, a very emotional contribution by Mr. Monroe, who clearly is who feels as though his contribution amounted to nil. He made some, and I heard this before where, Shabaka, perhaps maybe you can attest to it or not, whereby the Emancipation Support Committee charged the Black Caucus movement some $7,500 to rent a tent in the savannah.
But everybody has to pay for those.
But the position is that if it is, you have one organization, which is the Emancipation, who last year celebrated 25 years of existence, and you have a baby organization, which is the BCM, which is doing pretty similar, the same work that, which is to empower the African community. Why was there a need for the Emancipation Support Committee to charge the BCM? That's one of the the things that.
All right. So I want to. First of all, I want to acknowledge the contribution of Mr. Monroe. The thing is that what has happened again? Different things that happen in the black community and that kind of stuff. We have not had black
leadership.
We have not had a black middle and upper class step forward with resources in the kinds of numbers that other groups have had in terms of who are committed to social justice and social change within those groups. I mean, you have the thing of Mzumbo Lazar in the top of the early 20th century, late 19th century, earlier 20th century. And you could count the ones who have had those kinds of interventions. And Mr. Monroe put his money where his mouth was, and he invested in this thing. The other thing, but you have to understand, social movements are not individuals, are not, they don't depend on those things. Social movements are ideas and the coalitions of people around social justice ideas, and are workers who work towards the fulfillment of those objectives. And that changes, those faces change all the time and stuff. They find different forms and different kinds of things, and they dynamize, they rise, they change, they mutate, and all those different kinds of things. The Black Caucus, there was the Black Agenda, Black Caucus, all those kinds of things with David Mohammed, with the late Mohammed Shabazz, with Mr. Monroe. There are all these things that people and things moving about and that kind of stuff because of real needs on the ground. And people respond to that, and there's still constituencies that respond to that. What happened in the Black Caucus was that the Black Caucus grew faster, I think, than people expected. The Black Caucus had like 10,000 members within a short space of time, and it had a small board of 7 people or something like that was leading that. 7 people who at the beginning knew one another and could attest for one another and those kinds of things. But the kinds of agendas that 10,000 people required and the kinds of things that the demands and that kind of stuff were much larger than what 7 people could do. And the nature of growth And I mean, I am part of NGOs. I've been in progressive social movements for most of my adult life and a lot of my youth life. So I'm around trade union movements, NGOs, and that kind of stuff. And the growth of NGOs and social groups and that kind of stuff all have these problems of how do organizations mutate and change at organizational level and stuff when the agendas and when the audience and when the ambit change, when those things change.
Right, but Ruben,
And we face the same problems that would have faced businesses, NGOs, small businesses, and those
I
kinds
would
of
even
those
go one
kinds of
step
things.
further. In my studying of the social justice movements and so on, organizations tend to last at most 10 years, a decade.
Well, I would say one set lasts 6 months, a next set lasts 2 years, some last 3 years, then 6 years, and then 10 years. Those are the lifespans.
Right, but I feel as though,
What you have
going
any- what-
around
what-
and around
No,
in
no,
a
no, no.
circle and
I'm
then
describing what happened with the Black
zeroing
Caucus. So
in
because
if you would allow me to, Ruben,
Yeah.
I have played a very pivotal role in the Black Caucus in that I was one of the official media voices. So you would have information channeled from the board to me and respective co-hosts, radio personalities, etc. And you made a statement there in that the Black Caucus movement is not, one person. Is it that you're leveling that towards Mr. William
No,
Monroe?
I don't play those games.
And
I've
Mr.
already
Monroe?
said that Mr. Monroe has changed the course of the country in terms of culture, in terms of all the things he's done, and in terms of the Black Caucus. Because the same way that the Black Panther has awoken a spirit across the African diaspora, the Black Caucus did the same. That's why that 10,000 members. That 10,000 members are people who put their money where their mouth was and that kind of stuff, and people who voted with their money and that kind of stuff, that they were interested in the act of social change. It is the largest by membership African organization in the country in 3 years. And that was because of Mr. Monroe's investment and those kinds of things. However, you had the next step of the organization. The next step of the organization was about about creating institutions and about social justice programs and those kinds
But
of
how do
things.
we create all
That
these things?
requires
Money.
it requires money, but that money comes from organization. And a board of 7 people, the same original board of 7 people, dealing with 10,000 people and dealing with those kinds of things, that can't work. That doesn't work in the trade union movement. It don't work in any of those other places and things. You have to evolve structures, and that evolution of structures is not an easy thing, because it's a question of trust. Because every new person you bring in is a question of trust. Every new thing and every system. These are not unique to Black organizations.
But,
these are things, growing pains that
But in the
happen.
Black Caucus movement, you're talking about trust. I know for a fact, because I have been in it, that you had board members, senior board members, who immediately, when a board meeting ended, they were coming out of the board meeting. And for my viewing audience, when you have a board meeting, whatever is discussed in a board meeting ought to stay in the board meeting.
Yeah.
And immediately when the board meeting concluded, you had them going around and talking about every single thing, word for word.
I don't know the people who I was on the board with that those things happen. But I would say.
No, but I'm telling you that.
Okay, but again, I would say this happens in corporations. This happens in NGOs. This is not unique. This happens in all kinds of organizations.
We're not disputing that, but there is a dire need for the African community.
Right, but we are not different than other human. We are not different than other human
but
beings.
You're saying that all the other ethnic groups, even the East Indian community, who boast a majority in the society in terms of the population,
But
they are Hindus.
I said I'm glad you used the word. You qualified majority with the word boast there.
Right. So, but they are Hindus who all answer to the idea of Brahma, who answer to the
Hi, good afternoon, caller.
answer to the Gita
program
and all of those things. So, and a structure that includes pundits and a whole set of structures and things. They answer that because that's handed on 10,000 years. We do not have any such institutions left.
Hi, I'm listening to the program. Thanks for taking the call. I'm listening to the program and I'm hearing about Mr. William Monroe spending this last summer money, and I haven't seen anybody come to his defense.
But I just defended the work that he did.
Let me just add to that. All this talk about disunity, I don't think no one here could point to one single statement from the Executive Emancipation Support Committee condemning the Black Caucus or Mr. William Monroe?
It's not a matter of condemning. It's about
criticizing
supporting.
even. Let's
No,
use
it's
a
not
lesser
even about
word.
It's not about condemning or criticizing. It's about supporting. And I think that the BCM would have felt as though, given the fact that the BCM has been doing a lot of work, that the Emancipation Support Committee, when they demanded that $7,500 for a tent in the Savannah, I think that they felt that was a slap to their face, because we're doing all the same thing, which is to push the African community
to base an entire thing on a charge of $7,500 is kind of ridiculous.
I'll call back again.
Yes, sir.
Because you know why? The Hartford said to you what our black people go through, African people. Look at what's the next thing. You have Makalda Daga. You fight so much for African people. You come and you join the Indian side. I can't understand what really wrong with our African people. Look at you have one man carrying on that show now, like with David Mohammed. But no communication with the outer part of the African people. You have to communicate. You have to communicate with the people, like how the Black Caucus used to do. Yes, sir? You have a station that people could communicate and give their views and different things.
Right.
But you don't get that with the rest of people in it. Don't like every man fighting in their own hole. Every man fighting in the own hole. That is not the unity. Unity is to come together in a force. When you go forward with a force. Right? African people could do that. But what's really wrong with us?
All right. First of all, let me just, I'm sort of holding out on the conversation here. But Brother David has formed the Black United Front, the Crossroads Freedom Project is a part of that. The ESC has been invited, and they're sending representatives as well, and various other groups across the country. David has his radio shows. I just attended one.
Both of us were
on
Sunday.
with Roxanne Mohammed on, what was it? What
Sunday,
day was
I think Sunday.
On Sunday. I have a radio program on Wednesday nights, 8 to 10. It's called Indaba, the place where knowledge grows. So, I mean, work
I
continues.
used to be on it.
Work does,
Other members used to be on it. I mean.
We've had BCM members on Indaba as well.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it is there's a bit of, I don't want to get into that type of conversation right now, but I just want to say that we have never said anything adverse about the Black Caucus movement, and whatever's left of the Black Caucus movement right now,
it still exists. Well. The 10,000 members still exists. There is an executive.
And there's potential there. It's still would want to see.
The idea is
committee to, collaborate with the Black Caucus movement.
The Emancipation Support Committee is willing and ready to collaborate, and they did collaborate in the deepest way with the BCM. There were different disagreements. The different disagreements take place within organizations all the time. And Jack broke up because of disagreements as well. But you never heard Daga condemning my father. My father would have disagreed with things he did. He never condemned Daga either.
I mean,
there is
to me,
there's functional unity there.
Yeah, in that, and I will tell the world overall, all of the viewers, that I did have some very strong statements to make about the Emancipation Committee, because I did, in fact, I interviewed your mom in and around the time, and your mom is a member of the board of directors of the ESC, yeah?
Yes.
Yes, your dad as well as yourself. And
I'm not on the board, no.
One of the things that, I apologize, one of the things that came up was that many of my callers at the show wanted to find out what has the Emancipation Support Committee done, given the fact that they were celebrating some 25 years, their 25th anniversary last year. And I asked questions, what tangible contributions can we see emanating the Emancipation Support Committee? Case in point, if you juxtapose the ESC with the Mahasabha or Gopio, I would say it's chalk and cheese.
Well, the Mahasabha is a much longer standing organization, going well back into the
100 and something.
Yeah, 100 and something years.
And again, it is building on a 10,000-year-old tradition which has been handed down uninterrupted.
So you're saying that the
ESC comes out of, Victor was talking earlier about the where we had reached at the dawn of around 1970 in the 70s. ESC comes out of one of the fragments. Most of our people decided that politics would be the answer. They went with the People's National Movement, and they felt that their liberation would be taken from there. There was a smaller group, a minority of the African community that said, you know what, I'm not so sure about that. We're going to go with cultural nationalism. We're going to continue to build consciousness in the event that that doesn't work out for us. That's where the ESC starts to build from, that small minority that holds out, that does not get involved in the party politics. And this is not just, again, Trinidad and Tobago. This is a global phenomenon.
But I would like to focus our attention on
Trinidad but you need to understand.
You have to understand as a global context. This is happening all over the African diaspora.
This is where we, remember Africa, when you see things happening, when we start talking about what's happening in the Indian community, and you think that it's a local phenomenon, it's a part of a global phenomenon, right? You have India and its diaspora have reached a particular stage in their development coming out of their colonial experience. Africa and its diaspora hasn't reached that stage yet.
So you're saying that we have to wait some 100 years?
We don't have to wait. You see, at the same time you're saying that and that kind of stuff, African people are the people who have been the democratic pulse of the entire planet Earth, who have transformed the laws and the civil rights movements of the entire planet, who have integrated every single institution on planet Earth in the white supremacist West, who have transformed social mobility, all of those kinds of things. So even people saying that African people are so disunited and whatever, but African people have transformed the planet and continue to transform.
Let me just go one step further. Let me just go one step further.
Allow me to go one step further. I think we've got a call. Caller, thank you for holding.
Yeah, because I called the only time and I can't go with us. I'm African, you know.
Caller, I do apologize.
Yeah, good afternoon,
yes, my love. Make a contribution.
Talking something with Sylvia. I'm noticing the bringing up the brothers in them, the picture up on the screen. I want to make them out. I'm making them out. I come on making you out.
Oh.
And what happened there was Mr. Mono, he been real touch. And I started feeling because look what he goes, I said, what's your, are they going jumping about you on Cambon, down waiting on all your soul, all your set up, wicked pocketers or. Because why all the things are Grenadian, you only just want to get from them, all the set of vipers.
Right. Well, they edit the name calling and that kind of stuff. These are people who, you see, the other thing is that people do not know the truth. People are only responding to the stereotype of that black people. And we are telling you all the truth, but you all are seemingly not listening. We are saying that there was collaboration that happened between the two groups. There was never any open acrimony between the two groups and that kind of stuff and thing. And that black unity at every stage is always a work in progress. Just as institutional unity, even at small businesses, big businesses, amongst any group and that kind of stuff. I have been privy to what is going within the inner workings of Syrian community, white communities, East Indian communities and that kind of stuff. And the kind of disunity, we never even witnessed that kind of stuff, disunity within our groups and that kind of stuff. There's nothing comparable, trust me, right? But the thing is that we always look to African groups and penalize African groups and go after African groups as if one, African disunity is like a solely African phenomena or those kind of things. African, despite the fact of 500 years of genocidal concentration on creating disunifying energies within the community, continue to come together and continue to transform the world. And they always, the possibilities are always there. The Black Caucus is still a possibility. The Emancipation Support Committee is a going concern and continues to be a reality. And the transformation of the agendas of the Emancipation Support Committee generation to generation will continue to happen. So the things that the Emancipation Support Committee did 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago would not be the things that the Emancipation Support Committee does now or 5 years from now. The BCM, as it reanimates itself, would not be the same, and it will continue to grow, and, and those things, the black agenda, all of these things, the new things.
Let me just give a positive spin. I just want people to understand where, as we talk in Afrofuturism, let's just get a sense of where we are.
Black Panther, Afrofuturism.
Haiti just joined the African Union, right? You have members of the diaspora as individuals becoming officials within the context of the highest decision-making body in the African Union.
Which is
the
highest
African Union
African
has,
organization on planet Earth.
It's something they call the sixth region of Africa, which includes everybody in the diaspora. And one of the major challenges that the African Union has given itself in the 21st century is how to operationalize and realize the sixth region of the African Union. And so you have all kinds of things, and that diaspora people, including organizations like the ESC and others all across the diaspora, have been involved in for a long time, that will bear fruit in this century, as long as we could continue to keep the work moving forward. And so, we will arrive at a point where perhaps others are at this particular moment in our own time. We are coming from our own unique historical experiences. And, we are working as hard as we can with the resources that are available to us,
which are not a lot,
that are against us, right? Some of the most powerful forces on the planet. And we are transforming the condition of our people gradually in different ways. I mean, the Crossroads Freedom Project, which I am now director of, I have worked through the ESC and other organizations. I've gone and taught in schools in Belmont, up on the top of Laventille. I've done all kinds of community-based projects. I've worked on criminal justice reform. At some point I said, you know what? We could make incremental gains in all these little things. But at the base of it, we have to address, again, this question of independence, giving substance and form to our independence. So I formed the Crossroads Freedom Project, and we hope to generate a dialogue through that project that will result in a new architecture of spirit and values in our societies that could affect young people across the board by challenging all the colonial legacy items that are so bad for our health. But I mean, it is so much work to be done.
Right. Now, as we wrap up this evening's program, because, time has, certainly run away, I will extend an open invitation to both of you collectively or individually to attend, so that we can continue further discussions on the African...
On what, Black Panther or what?
On the African community, as my topic today was Black Panther and the Afro-Trinbagonian community's response to Black Panther, and that sense of being a sense of solidarity and African pride.
Closing statements time. We reach closing statements time.
I would like to assert the point that I am of the view that I am getting, or I've gotten 45 minutes of being taken around and around and around, and we have not.
What question do you think that you haven't answered today? What's the core question?
Time
we just want to know the question that you think that has not been answered. That's all.
Why the leaders in the African community are not united? Why is the African community in the position? The African community.
Imagine this, my sister. Let me answer this. Let me put it to you this way.
No, but I'm out of time.
I can walk into NJAC now. We haven't been part of NJAC since 1983. I can walk into their office right now and go and speak to the leader.
Thank you. No, because I'm making a point. You don't come on my show and you just cut me off while I'm trying to wrap up and act as if it's a joke, because the African community is in a very serious situation as it stands now. I don't know if you are oblivious to the crime situation. I don't know if you are oblivious to the realities and the cancer state of the African community. And I am seeing that there is a total lack of leadership as it relates to the African community. We're talking about putting on the shikis and kaftans, but where is the discussion about group economics? Where is the discussion about money, the importance of money? You're talking about the changing of changing systems where you cannot do anything without money. But unfortunately, I am out of time, and I will definitely continue the discussion tomorrow. Thank you so much for being a part of today's discussion. Thank you to my viewing audience and my callers. I'll see you tomorrow. You're watching The Cold Truth with Kimm Cole.
Ladies and gentlemen, Our country is falling
The
apart.
nation is in mourning tonight.
Our institutions are failing. Crime is out of control. It is our duty to fix it. We are touching on every sector of society. Race, class, and corruption. Nothing is off limit. No holds barred. The Cold Truth with Kimm. The power belongs to the people. Join us right here, Monday to Sunday, 4:45 p.m. to 5:45 p.m.